Definition and meaning of education. India is determined to build a society of humane, committed, participative, and productive citizens who can shoulder the task of building a strong and prosperous country. Education has always played an important role in shaping the destiny of the society through development of the individual, linking education to the task of social upliftment. Human beings are rational, and their ability to speak, communicate, and think is of high level, very different from all other animals. Naturally, they are active and aspire to achieve progress. Education is mainly responsible for the intelligence, workmanship, overall development, and their progress. Likewise, education is the main source of progressive and positive human development, making it essential to understand the concept in detail. Education is a planned and purposeful activity which is taken up by the teacher and the learner to achieve distinct goals. An aim is crucial to achieve any purpose. As quoted by John Dewey, an American philosopher and reformer, an aim is a foreseen end that gives directionality to an activity. Having an aim to measure the success and failure keeps both the teacher and the learner on the right track. However, aims of education are dynamic as they change from time to time and place to place in accordance with the philosophy of life. Education plays a vital role in the overall development of an individual, society, and nation. Having a positive impact on the development of the individual, the society, and the nation is the key function of education. Furthermore, educating individuals with special needs is another prime function of education to address the students' individual differences and needs. Education is essential for every society and individual without any discrimination. It is a prominent force in bringing significant changes in the society. Many people have emphasized the necessary role of education and its unique importance for national development. Therefore, education plays a vital role in the training of the teacher. Many people have emphasized the importance of education, and it started from Socrates and Plato to Dewey and Gandhi. The word education has been defined differently by different people. So, what is the meaning and definition of education? Education is a dynamic and inclusive concept which has a wide implication. Since education is closely related to human life, it is difficult to attribute a single meaning to it. However, the meaning of education can be understood from its four Latin root words, that is, educare, educere, educatum, and educo. According to some learned people, the word education has been derived from the Latin term educatum, which means the act of teaching or training. A group of educationalists say that it has come from another Latin word, educare, which means to bring up or to raise. According to a few others, the word education has originated from another Latin term, educere, which means to lead forth or to come out. All these meanings indicate that education seeks to nourish the good qualities in man and draws out the best in every individual. In the Indian context, Vidya depicts knowledge. It is derived from the Sanskrit word vid, which means to know. Another word, shiksha, is also derived from the Sanskrit root shos, which means discipline. Shiksha or education is discipline. The word talim is derived from the Arabic root ilm, which means knowledge. Talim is the process of providing and acquiring knowledge. The word education was defined in many ways, as the whole concept of education cannot be given by one particular definition. All educationists, philosophers, scientists, political thinkers, and idealists have expressed their own views regarding education based on their experience, understanding, views, and situations. But the concept and scope of education is very diverse. One set of definitions lay stress on the inner potentialities of the individual. These definitions view education as the process of unfolding or developing what is innate in the child. We can now go through the definitions on education from some authentic sources, which are: education has been interpreted as something which makes a man self-reliant and selfless, and that is from Rig Veda. The Upanishad says, education is that whose end product is salvation. Education means the training which one gets from nature, said Panini. Self-realization is education, according to Shankaracharya. Education means an all-round drawing out of the best in a child and man, by body, mind and spirit, said Gandhiji. Education is the manifestation of divinity already existing in man, said Swami Vivekananda. Education is that which makes one's life in harmony with all existence, said Tagore. Sri Aurobindo said, education is the development of happiness and character in a child. Socrates said, education means the bringing out of the ideas of universal validity which are latent in the mind of every man. Education means the development of desired changes in a person, according to Adam. Education is the creation of a sound mind in a sound body. It develops man's faculty, especially his mind, so that he may be able to enjoy the contemplation of supreme truth, goodness, and beauty, of which perfect happiness essentially consists, according to Aristotle. Education is leading out of hidden power in man, said Froebel. Education is the natural, harmonious, and progressive development of man's innate powers, according to Pestalozzi. Education is the complete development of the individuality of the child so that he can make an original contribution to the best of his capacity, said T.P. Nunn. Education includes all the processes that develop human ability and behavior. Education in all its broad and narrow concepts. The concept of education varies from time to time and place to place, but education means not just the communication of information by the teacher or acquisition of knowledge or intelligence or experiences. Education fails if it does not help the individual to cultivate the art of living. Education is a process which should help the personality of an individual to equip, carry out any task, and adjust with the changing environments in order to achieve the goals in life. Education should make the effort to bring out the natural hidden powers and capacities of an individual to lead a complete life. Education is a lifelong process of development, and it started from birth to death In other words, from womb to tomb. It is promoted by almost every experience in life. Experience-based learning is also education, and all experiences are educative in nature. Accordingly, education is not confined to schools, colleges, or universities alone. It includes all the knowledge and experiences acquired in infancy, childhood, adolescence, youth, adulthood through any agency of education. For example, school, home, society, workplace, or places of worship. Education is more than teaching or instructing and can therefore be regarded as similar to the art of living. Consequently, education becomes a lifelong process. Every individual has talent, and education has to discover and provide suitable experiences to nourish that talent. Education includes all aspects of human life: cultural, domestic, economic, geographical, political, religious, and social. Therefore, education is responsible for the overall development as it refines an individual's behavior, knowledge, and character. The meaning of education can be understood in a narrow sense or in a broader sense or in a very comprehensive perspective. The following definitions of eminent personalities emphasize the broader meaning of education. In the wider sense, it is a process that goes on throughout life and is promoted by almost every experience in life, said S.S. Mackenzie. Education in its widest sense includes all the influences which act upon an individual during his passage from cradle to grave, said Dumville. Education is the development of all those capacities in the individual which enable him to control his environment and fulfill his possibilities, said John Dewey. In a narrow sense, school instruction is called education. It implies imparting information, giving instruction, schooling, training, and making people literate, apart from teaching and preparing for a trade or vocation. In this process, the society strives to achieve predetermined aims during specific time by providing pre-structured textual knowledge to children with the help of certain methods of teaching. In this scenario, a teacher plays a dominant role, whereas the child is a passive listener and sometimes learns mechanically. The scope of education is very narrow here, as it starts when a child gets admission to school and ends when they finish school, college, or university. Such knowledge cannot help in the complete development of personality and will not be helpful for the natural development of a child's inborn powers and talents. The following definitions from some eminent personalities make the narrow meaning of education more clear. In narrow sense, education may be taken to mean any consciously directed effort to develop and cultivate our powers, said S.S. Mackenzie. Education is the process in which knowledge, character, and behavior of the young are shaped and molded. Professor James Drever said that. The culture which each generation purposefully gives to those who are to be its successors in order to qualify them for at least keeping up and, if possible, for raising the level of improvement for which has been attained, said John Stuart Mill. How do we view education as a process? Process is a measured and focused activity which helps to attain the desired result or objective. Activities related to education are educative processes. It is a way of learning to the learner and teaching to the teacher. It is an activity carried out to develop the child physically, intellectually, morally, and socially. John Adam called the process of education as bipolar. In this process, two poles are involved, the educator and the educated. In other words, the teacher and the taught. The resultant of this process is education. Here, one will teach and another will learn. One will talk and the other will listen. The activities are interrelated and dependent. J.S. Ross quotes, "Like a magnet, education must have two poles and is a bipolar process." On the other hand, John Dewey advocates that education is not a bipolar process. Besides the teacher and the taught, there is another element which is significant, which is the curriculum. The society will provide the curriculum for the children's growth and development. The teacher, the taught, and the curriculum are equally important. So, according to John Dewey, it is a tripolar process. The modern concept of education emphasizes on self-learning and lifelong education. Apart from the school and the teacher, there are many informal agencies and media working along with the teacher, the taught, and the curriculum. Hence, modern education process is neither a bipolar nor a tripolar, but a multipolar process. Let us see how teaching is a vital process of education. Teaching is one of the most important processes of education. It seeks to develop all the diverse abilities and understandings. It is the task of the teacher which is carried out for the development of a child. Teaching is not a simple process but a complex one. It may take different forms. It includes training, instruction, and development of understanding, as well as cognitive process and abilities along with critical thinking. Teaching is a deliberate, systematic, purposeful activity carried on with a specific intention to bring real learning. Teaching is a constant communication between the teacher and the taught, designed to educate the latter. Teaching is the stimulation, guidance, direction, and encouragement of learning. The main aim of teaching is to help the children to respond to their environment in an effective way. Teaching leads to learning. We use many terms in our discussions relative to education which have some connotations with education as a process. Such terms are teaching, training, instruction, indoctrination, initiation, and so on. Sometimes terms like training, indoctrination, and initiation are used as though they are synonymous with education. What is the role of a teacher in education process? The teacher introduces the students to knowledge according to their interests, attitudes, and abilities. The teacher initiates the development of skills, stimulates the students to participate in educational process, and develops their mind. Food and nutrition is essential for the development of the body. Education, on the other hand, is important for the development of the mind. Consequently, initiation becomes a prerequisite for the development of the mind. The role of teacher in initiating and inculcating useful knowledge is very significant in the development of child's mind. So, education can be viewed as a product, a tool of development and self-realization. So far, you have learnt about the concept of education as a process. Education can be viewed as a product, development, and self-realization also. How is education a product? The product is the end product of an activity. As a product, education is the sum total of what is received through gaining knowledge, skills, interests, attitudes, and values that are the outcomes of learning as a process. So, the process of education will produce students of quality. Hence, education is also a product. Is knowledge not the most basic aim of education? Knowledge leads to wisdom. Therefore, education should lead to the acquisition of knowledge. Knowledge is virtue and knowledge is power. Education brings this virtue and power. Since the ancient time, people have been giving importance to knowledge. They have considered that man without knowledge is like an animal. Hence, education should help the individual to acquire knowledge, and it is instrumental for the progress of a society. Charles Dickens says, children must be stuffed with as much knowledge as possible because character and sound education are associated with it. Therefore, the educative process ultimately leads to knowledge. Hence, knowledge is considered as a product of education. What is knowledge if it doesn't teach you skill? Education also develops the various basic skills like reading, writing, and computation, which in turn helps to acquire knowledge. Skills are very important outcomes of education. Education helps to train the students in experimental skill, drawing skill, constructional skill, and observational skill. It also helps the student to solve the problems by developing problem-solving skill. This in turn develops the confidence among students to face the problems in their life also. Let us not underestimate the power of attitude and values. Education becomes a product only when it is used as assimilation of the culture of the society and for its transmission from one generation to another. As such, it perpetuates and gives continuity to the society. Since culture is dynamic in nature, education fosters to the people values which are universally accepted as valuable at a particular point of time. For example, in the present day world, scientific attitude, spirit of inquiry, and habit of cooperation are accepted as desirable values. Therefore, education should inculcate these values in the minds of the students. Education directs the undeveloped capacities, attitudes, interests, and urges of children into healthy channels. Education will help to cultivate moral, spiritual, social, mental, and humane values among students, and this in turn develops a wholesome personality. How inculcating interest in learning is a primary aim. Interest is another important outcome of education. Needs and interests of students are considered in various aspects of education. As a product, education develops interest towards reading, writing, and cultivating good hobbies and creates interest to participate in various activities wholeheartedly. Education as a tool of development. Education will be responsible for physical, mental, and emotional development in man. The function of the education is to give such training. For this, school environment should also be helpful. According to T.P. Nunn, education is an effort to secure for everyone the conditions under which individuality is most completely developed. John Dewey is of the opinion that the development those capacities, physical, mental, moral, and social, in the individual will help him to control his environment and fulfill his possibilities. Socrates has said, knowledge is power, and this knowledge can be developed by education only. P.C. Banerjee has said, education is the development of the power of adaptation to an ever-changing social environment. Plato also said that education develops in the body and in the soul of the pupil all the beauty and all the perfection which he is capable of. Gandhiji also said that education has to bring and overall development of the child. Through education, an individual develops the innate powers and capacities. It also brings knowledge and experience and in turn develops the man. Education as self-realization. Self-actualization is the realization of one's own potentialities. The individual should be helped to know his powers and abilities, and he should be able to be free to develop them. Then only his individuality becomes complete and unique. It is the knowledge of experiences gained at different stages through mental ability. Self-actualization is attaining complete satisfaction for having achieved the desire and the needs according to one's own abilities, interests and attitudes, and then realizing the functions of the world and to cooperate in the welfare and progress of mankind. Self-actualization is possible only when the development of the child or the individual is in a balanced, harmonious and integrated way. For this, the teacher should create a congenial situation and try to bring out the talents of the students and make them to realize their competencies. Such a person can develop the virtues and understand the world to contribute for the progress of the society. Psychologically, self-actualization means to fulfill one's individual nature in all its aspects. When all the basic needs are satisfied, self-actualization is possible. In Abraham Maslow's human hierarchy of needs, the highest stage is the stage of self-actualization. According to Maslow, when the basic needs are satisfied, at least minimally, an individual will be motivated towards self-actualization. A self-actualized individual will be dynamic, optimistic, void of anger, distress, malice, selfishness and aggressiveness. A self-actualized individual behaves with love, tolerance and spirit of cooperation. In conclusion, one could say that the meaning of education can be understood from its roots of 4 Latin words, that is, educare, educere, educatum and educo. These words basically imply to nourish, to bring up, to lead out and to train. Broadly speaking, education is a process of development from birth to death. It is a lifelong process. In a narrow sense, school instruction is called education. This aims at the mental development of children who come to school. Aims of education are classified into general and specific aims and individual and social aims. Education should train and develop the individual. It is essential to give importance to the unique interests of every individual. As a result, good individuals will become good citizens. Education should also aim at social development by developing social consciousness and bring about social efficiency. Individual and social aims should complement each other, as this correlation of both the aims achieves the purpose of education more distinctly. The Government of India has appointed commissions to reorient and formulate the system of education to meet the demands of the country. Functions of education towards individual, society and nation play a complementary role for the overall individual, social and national development. Also, education plays an important role in special education. Education can be bipolar, where the teacher and the taught are the two entities. Tripolar, where the teacher, the taught and the curriculum are the three entities. Or multipolar process, a modern education process where entities like media and non-formal agencies work along with the teacher, the taught and the curriculum. Education is also a product. Knowledge, skills, interest, attitudes, and values are the outcomes of learning, which are the products of education. Education will be responsible for physical, mental, and emotional development and bring all-round development in man. Self-actualization is the realization of one's own potentialities. Education will provide the means to realize the child's innate power and abilities. In its narrow sense, education is a formal, conservative process mainly confined to the school campus. In its wider sense, education becomes a vague and informal process aiming at nothing but allowing the child uncontrolled freedom for arbitrary activities. Through such a process, it is not possible to inculcate social, moral, and spiritual values in children. So, both the processes are one-sided and emphasize the two extremes. The real concept of education is a synthesis of these two processes. This synthesis will develop the child to the full according to his inherent tendencies, with emphasis on concurrent development of society, of which he is an integral part. Such an education will develop both the child and the society to higher and higher positions of glory and cultural eminence. Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world, said Nelson Mandela.